I'm testing the microphone. Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Kayla. I'm the digital media specialist at the Street Trust. Thank you so much for being here. It's great to see a big crowd in person and also some folks online. Just a reminder that this evening we have a public event that's free, included in your cost of your ticket, called the Move Into Action Pitch Fest. There's going to be some shorter, smaller presentations. The challenge is to explain your idea in 400 seconds or less. It should be really fun. We'll have popcorn and sangria Sarah made. So it should be a really good time. I hope you all can make it. Now, moving into this session is Equity and Safe Routes to School, featuring Nora Stoelting, the Safe Routes to School planner at Alta Planning and Design, Tom Holmes, planner at Zan Associates, and Joy Miciano, president and CEO at Zan Associates. Thank you so much for being here.
Testing. Okay, please let me know, like, hold a finger up or down if I need to speak louder or softer. So hi everyone, thanks so much for joining. This is Equity and Safe Routes to School. It's nice to see some familiar faces and also some faces that I've only met virtually. Hi Sarah and Kim. My name is Nora, and I'm co-leading this session with Joy and Tom, and Bridget, who's managing the Zoom room. We will go through some introductions in a moment, but first of all, I just wanted to say this topic, equity in safe routes to school, can be a really big, complex, deep, rich topic. We only have an hour here today, so the focus of this session is going to be introducing you all to a few tools and resources, and then engaging with those as a group in some small group work. So hopefully we're able to get into some interesting territory, but just keeping in mind that it will probably leave some things to be desired after this session. I also wanted to mention that despite the description of this session, we're actually not going to be getting into many of the Oregon Safe Routes to School work. So if you're curious about the Oregon equity work, you should come to tomorrow's annual practitioners meeting. We'll be diving into that a lot more. Today we'll be focusing on some tools that are part of the Minnesota Safe Routes to School program. All right, so we're going to get into some facilitator introductions. We'll each share our name, workplace, and something we're hoping for or looking forward to from this session today. So my name is Nora Stoelting. I'm a Safe Routes to School planner at Alta Planning and Design here in Portland. And I am hoping to inspire some personal reflection around equity work today. Tom, would you like to go next?
I'm Tom Holmes. I'm a senior planner at Zan Associates, and I'm excited to hear about what you all are working on in Oregon, because most of my experience has come from Minnesota, and I moved out to Portland a couple of years ago, and I'm still learning about the community.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Joy Miciano. I'm president of Zan Associates. If you're not familiar with Zan, we're a Minneapolis-based company, a consulting company that specializes in communication and engagement work. So I'm really excited to share with you the work we've been doing in Minnesota around equity and equitable engagement, not only with Safe Routes to School, but with all of our other work. I'm also excited to hear some feedback from you all of what can we do better and what you all have been doing for equity work.
And then we do have an online group leader named Bridget Bjorklund. Bridget is Zan's Director of Equity and Engagement, and she is amazing.
Okay, so that's all of us. And hopefully you all will get to know each other more in a moment. We'll do some chatting amongst the group. But just to go over briefly what we're doing today, there's the agenda on the screen. So I'll lead us through a little intro activity where you'll chat with each other. Joy will lead us through some background on the Minnesota Safe Routes to School program, and specifically the equity scorecard and how that tool is used. Then Tom will lead us through a scenario-based exercise that we'll do in small groups, kind of putting into practice this equity scorecard tool. We'll chat as a large group and share a resource that hopefully you can dive into on your own outside of this session, and wrap it up with a little closing activity. So next slide. So we're going to invite you to chat a little bit amongst each other. So we'll do 2 rounds of this, so you can first turn to one person close to you, and then after 3 minutes, you'll turn to another person close to you. And just share your name, anything you want to share about kind of who you are, what work you're involved in, and what feels exciting to you about exploring equity in your work, what feels challenging about exploring equity in your work. Those are your 2 main prompts. The word work can be interpreted loosely. You could also talk about equity work, or the topic of equity in your life or some other realm. Doesn't have to be your job. So 3 minutes, you can turn to the person next to you, behind you, in front of you, or across the room if you see someone you really want to talk to. I'm going to ring a bell after 3 minutes, and that's going to signify turn to someone else and answer these questions with someone else. So, any questions about this? Okay, go ahead, find someone to talk to. 3 minutes. Okay, go ahead and wrap up your conversations as much as possible. Try to wrap up your conversations. Okay, if you can hear me, touch your head. If you can hear me, touch your shoulders. If you can hear me, put your hands in the air. Okay, great. Okay, so we're not going to do a full-on share-out about those conversations, but I would love to hear a few words, like if you could think of one word to encompass what you described around what feels exciting about exploring equity in your work. We can just do like popcorn style if a few people want to share out one word. You can yell it out and I'll repeat it in the microphone for the live stream. Opportunity. What else? Voice. Voice. Fun.
Youth/students.
Youth. Stronger. One more. Learning. Okay, wonderful. Those are great words. Diverse group of words. What about what feels challenging? If you could sum up what you described to your buddy that you were talking with in one word, what would it be? Trade-offs. What else? Discovery. Capacity. Okay, one more. Stigma. Wonderful. Okay, thanks for sharing. We're going to move right along. I'm going to pass it off to Joy to dive into some of the Minnesota Safe Routes to School overview.
Thanks, Nora. All right, so one more raise of hand. How many people are familiar with Safe Routes to School? Raise your hand. So quite a few. And how many of you have worked in a Safe Routes to School program, policy, project? Okay, so quite a few. So this isn't going to be a dive deep into what is Safe Routes to School, but we just wanted to give you an overview and let you know that what Minnesota is doing for Safe Routes to School is very similar to what Oregon is doing. Zan Associates has been working with Alta in Minnesota for the last 8 years to do Safe Routes to School planning grants. And that means that we are coming in and helping schools, talking to the teachers, the students, the families, the administrators on what needs to be improved so that walking and biking and rolling is safe for all of their students to, from, and at their schools. So we're going to talk about the equity work that we do in Minnesota regarding our Safe Routes to School plan. But I want to just give you a little bit background on how we got to doing the equity work that we have. Safe Routes to School has basically 6 E's: education, encouragement, engineering, engagement, evaluation, and equity. And what we really focused on in our work for Safe Routes to School is the equity work. And one of the reasons that we focused on equity is because as a company, it was really something important for us to do. It's very important for the public agencies that we work in, including MnDOT, who we're working closely with for Safe Routes to School. So we also just wanted to highlight how MnDOT selects their Safe Routes to School planning grants and the schools that they work in. So this is online. You're able to access this. It's an interactive tool that MnDOT has. It basically highlights all the schools in Minnesota, and in part of the selection of which schools get the planning grants, they look at an equity score. And the equity score is based on the schools, on the diversity of the school, the students of color, how many people are on free and reduced lunch, as well as who are the English language learners, as well as who has access to transportation or cars, as well as some other things that they look at. But this is really cool. I went on it online this morning just to make sure I understood what it was about. But you can zoom in on any of those dots. It tells you what school it is, and it tells you their equity score and their percentage of all those characteristics that I just described. So we're talking about an equity scorecard tool today and how we developed it and how we use it in Safe Routes to School. So this is an example of our equity scorecard tool, and we call it the ZAN Equity Scorecard Tool, otherwise known as the ZEST. So if I say zest, now you know what I'm talking about. But this is just an example, and this isn't anything brilliant or new or innovative. We just put it down on paper. It has made us accountable. It has given us a guide to be able to make sure we are doing equity in our work, not only for Safe Routes to School, but for all our work. So this is an example of how we would kick off the equity work with our projects. For our schools, we would sit down, we would have a meeting, we would call a meeting with the administrators, with the teachers, we would invite some families, students, and start walking through our equity scorecard tool. And so these are some of the basic questions at the beginning that we talk to them and ask them about to learn about the community. So we have a question, we use some prompts, and then we record their responses, and then also talk about what are the actions that we're going to do for this work based on the responses that we received. So the ZEST is basically, this is why we believe in the ZEST. The ZAN Equity Scorecard tool, it helps us to set goals, it provides guidance on equity, it keeps us accountable throughout the whole project. And so I should emphasize that this isn't just a one and done equity scorecard tool. It's something we do at the beginning of the project, at the middle, and at the end, and just to make sure that we're accounting for equity throughout the whole project. It helps builds trust with the people we're working with, builds relationships, and then we're all collaborating on this to make sure that we are reaching our equity goals for the work. So I'm not going to read through all of these, but I just wanted to say that one of the, what's been really important to my company is that we have our own equity commitments. So we have our internal equity commitments that we do as a company, but these are the equity commitments that we put on all of our projects. And again, nothing new for everyone. I think everyone does it. We go to where people are. We make sure we're talking to the people and asking them, how would you like to receive the information? How would you like to be engaged? But also trying to understand who are the people who aren't at the table and how do we bring them to the table. So these are the commitments that we based our equity scorecard tool on. And before I launch Tom into helping us with our activity, I also just want to make sure that when we talk about equity, it's not just about race and ethnicity. There are a lot of different characteristics of equity that we also need to consider. So I believe when some people think about equity, they think about urban environments. Well, I just want to say it's not just urban environments, and especially with Safe Routes to School. We've done schools that are urban, suburban, and rural. So when you're in an environment, just make sure that your definition of equity is very broad and includes a lot of different characteristics. So now I'm going to pass it on to Tom, who's going to lead us into a very exciting activity.
Thank you very much. So with this tool, we are really trying to be intentional about what we're doing with schools. It's not one size fits all. You saw a couple examples of questions that might not be the exact same question we ask at every single school. So we are going to practice a little bit today, and for some of you who have seen this before, we are switching up the activity. So these are two examples of questions that we have on a lot of our equity scorecards. One question about demographics, what is the racial, social, age, and economic makeup of the project in the area. We give a little prompt, go online, talk to people nearby, figure this out, and we need to have a full response. Then a second question, what key organizations can we partner with in the project? Focus on organizations that represent underrepresented groups. Neither of these questions by themselves are groundbreaking or innovative. A lot of you might be planners in the room or people who work in, I'm sure all of you work in transportation or are advocates in transportation. It's really about asking these questions to the right group of people at the beginning of projects so that we're all on the same page. So responses to these questions might be something like 50% of the people in the project area identify as Latino or Latina, 25% speak Spanish at home. Esperanza United is a local organization. Again, nothing wow, like we didn't know this, but it's getting the right people to answer these questions so that we know we are talking to the right people from the beginning of projects, so that we can identify actions such as we need to translate materials into Spanish. We need to reach out to Esperanza United. It's going to be very important for this school and is going to be an easy way to talk to some youth nearby. So we are gonna do a little scenario. We have a project in St. Paul that are not named macaroni and cheese schools, but we are changing it here. So we are going to be Mac Attack and Cheeseheads. Safe Routes to School plan. There's 2 schools, 1 high school, Macaroni High School, and 1 elementary school, Cheese Elementary, that are very near each other, but have different ages, with the high school being 9 through 12, and then the elementary being a K through 8. They're nearby, share a problem road that is 3rd Street right out in front of their schools. Our goal is to develop a plan that provides direction and recommendations for improving walking, rolling, and biking for macaroni and cheese students. This is just an example of how we use the scorecard for Safe Routes to School planning, but can be used in all types of Safe Routes to School projects, demonstration projects, trainings. We work most with planning grants, but want you to know that this can be applied to many different types of Safe Routes to School contexts. So I'm going to ask Joy and Nora to hand out a few things, and then online, Bridget is going to put in the chat a PDF of this same document. What you are receiving is a document that has 12 questions and 12 responses. These are real responses that we got, a bit abbreviated from a Safe Routes to School plan we did this year, and then names changed just to make it a little more fun. But they give you information. They start with questions way up top. Why are we doing this project? Getting people on the same page about why we are doing a Safe Routes to School project. It gets to the who, the how, and their responses to questions that are figured out at the beginning of a project. They might not be the perfect response, and I would expect if we were doing this for real, we would have much longer responses than you all get here. But you all have enough information to talk in a small group, so we are going to do another group activity here. In-person folks are going to go into groups of 3 to 4, and you're going to introduce yourselves, pick a recorder / note taker, and then discuss the responses and figure out what actions you would take based on those responses. So imagine you are the project team, and you have this information in front of you with a school for your Safe Routes to School plan. You need to figure out what to do with it next. How are we going to engage people? How are we going to lead? How are we going to make these responses actionable? And then we'll take let's take about 15 minutes here. And then we'll come back together and discuss what sorts of actions you all came up with. For the online group, I will turn off my mic, Bridget, just so there's no feedback, but you all are going to discuss as one big group online, and Bridget is going to facilitate, and then put any actions you find in the chat, and we can read those off here live. Any questions before I dive in? Kayla, are we getting any questions in the comments there in Zoom? All right, 15 minutes all.
I think we're doing good on time. I was laughing this morning.
3-minute warning. Start to wrap up. 3-minute warning.
I'll jump in. Oh, yeah, I can do that. I like being.
Yeah.
All right, let's bring it back in.
Yeah, you have to do. If you can hear me, hold 2 thumbs up.
If you can hear me, put a thumb in the air. If you can hear me, put your hand on your nose. If you can hear me, put your hand in the air. We're getting close. All right. We have a few questions up on the board that you all should be able to answer. You do not have to address any single question, but these are just prompts for you all. A little closer there.
So we're going to come back together, everyone. So if you can grab a seat, thank you all for participating in the group activity, and I'm going to have Tom lead us through the large group discussion.
All right, this microphone works a little better. All right, so there are a few questions up on the screen here. What action should the Safe Routes to School planning team take based on the responses? What actions is your group most excited about? Sorry about that. What other information do we need? And was there anything that surprised you? So recorders, you can feel free to answer one or a few of these questions. It's up to you, but we would like to hear from a few folks. And then folks online, if you can put responses in the chat, we'll have Kayla over there help read those off. And I'm going to have Joy kind of pass the mic around here.
So is there a first recorder that'd be willing to go first? I wish I had fabulous prizes to give out, but anyone? Anyone willing to respond to one of the questions? Oh, here we go. Thank you.
For the project basics, we talked about needing specific goals and how to measure progress and existing conditions, kind of getting a baseline so that we can track progress there. And then developing documentation, because a lot of the words we noticed were central, continued, progress, goals, those words are repeated. So focusing on that.
Thank you. Oh, we got someone back here. Thank you.
Hi, our group talked a lot about leveraging the community partnerships and the current relationships. We talked about seeing what else is planned within the school district and collaborating with things that are going on district-wide, going to existing spaces to meet with community members that aren't able to or don't have the time to come to a separate meeting about something. And we talked some about creating events and spaces for people to share their stories, where we could also invite policymakers or people who can make decisions on funding, because planning is great, but we wanted to make sure that there was implementation funding at the end of the tunnel.
Well, that was the funding part. I was about to ask, was there anything else, any other information that people would need to be able to respond to these questions that wasn't included?
Yeah, our group thought about needing to know of the specific grant requirements from the federal and state funds, and the capacity for school district and jurisdictional involvement, and to see if there are any relationships that we need to build within those two parties.
Great, thank you. Oh.
I like the, we're still under project basics, right? Yeah, I think from any of these. Okay, so so we figure ask parents. There's a statistic that probably 50% of parents may not use, they drive their kids to school because it may not be safe, and ask them why. Very preliminary activity. And then also later on in the process, have outreach in a variety of creative ways to go where they are. Town hall as well as other kinds of going to festivals and stuff.
Great, thank you. Anyone have any other responses that haven't been said? Or anything online, Kayla? Nope.
Oh. So you just want us to go over? Yeah. Well, I'll admit we didn't get very far because we had a great conversation, and we kind of just rambled on and about how awesome this program is, can be, and will be. I was partnered with a parent, a volunteer champion, and I am so excited that we have that. We have a representation here. I look for that, and that's one of my my actions, which is reach out and utilize your volunteers that you have on hand. Tap into your PTOs, your local organizations, maybe schools that don't have a strong PTO. You always will have somebody in the community that's willing to adopt a school, whether it be a church or other community partners that are looking to build relationships with families in their area. Run events, throw events. Our actions were to give, during those events, you give options and opportunity for the parents to speak about why they roll or walk, why they don't. Give them a chance to point out those barriers, because we sometimes have huge schools and we don't know where all the hotspot problems are, and how do the parents get that information to the people that need to hear it. They might not know that it's the school's issue or the city's issue or the county's issue. They don't know where to go, so we will give them a spot and a place to speak up on that.
Thank you.
All right, I had heard that the online folks are having a little issue in the chat. So online folks, sorry we're not going to be able to see the chat, but did sit down on a little bit of your convo, and it sounded really good. We want to show you what we did with this information. We went to Cheese Elementary, aka Nokomis South in St. Paul. We saw Fall Festival was one of the things in your list on the backside of the page, I believe. And we were like, great, easy way to talk to people. This event took some of those responses and used them. We wanted to make things fun. Somebody said fun at the very beginning of the project. Families are competing all the time with all these other things going on in their life. We have to make it fun and exciting for people to engage and talk to us about walking and biking. This is kind of a small thing, but we needed to track who we were talking to. We go out all the time and we hear great things, but then we're like, are we getting a representative sample of the families and the students who go to this school? So we have just a interactive survey board that we used at the Fall Festival. I believe this one was from, but other events as well. Gathers other information as well. How do you get to school? Are you excited about biking? Do you own a bike? Those are always fun ones for students to answer.
Tom, can I just jump in?
Yeah,
and so I know we've often been asked by elected officials of, well, how diverse was your activity? How many people of color came to this activity or an open house? We as a company do not like doing that ourselves by a visual effect, so we have to figure out a way how to ask people and how to make people feel comfortable giving us that information. Sometimes we do have a separate like sign-in sheet where we just say, can you identify your race, ethnicity, where you live, and all those things. But we have a very creative person on our staff who's like, why can't we just make that fun and make it more artistic and kind of like a game? So kids do it, parents do it, and it's just a nice way to be able to collect that information without seeming so intrusive.
Quick question on that. Do the colors mean anything?
I don't think so, right?
Visually pleasing. Yes, and it's optional, but it does give us a little bit of a sense of who we heard from. We heard, this gets a little cut off, but we heard from high schoolers that it would be easy to engage with them online and through classrooms. After talking with teachers, they just didn't have time in their curriculum. They said, send us a survey and we'll get this out. So we got great feedback on that, huge numbers. We heard we needed to translate things, so we got things translated in fun ways. This is a little tic-tac-roll board where kids answer the questions and put an X or an O on the questions that they answer. And then we heard that parents are leaders in the community from the responses, and we need to talk to them. There's an after-school parent group, and we brought an interpreter and had great conversations. Those were a few of the things that we did for this specific Safe Routes to School plan at Macaroni High School and Cheese Elementary. Some overall lessons learned: don't assume, inquire, and listen. This is so huge. We have done a lot of Safe Routes to School plans, and I think it tends to make me want to do the same thing again and again and assume that people know what's going on with Safe Routes to School across the state and across the country, and that's not the case. We need to start from those why questions that we answered in our project basics. Why are we doing this? Why is it important? And what are we trying to get out of it are very important questions to answer as a group. Not just the project basics, but then the who, what, why, how are really important. The scorecard process holds everyone accountable. Getting the right people in the room, that can mean different things, by the way, to different communities. For example, one of our projects last year in Farmington, Minnesota, we had a school built on the edge of town. For all you Safe Routes to School people, school siting is the hardest thing to overcome. But there was a new development going in right next to the school. We had the developer there. That's not somebody we usually have at those meetings, or hadn't to this point, but that was a person that they said needed to be in the room. Families and school staff are busy. You all know this. There's a million things going on. We need to show up where they're already at rather than making them to come to us. Students who are too young or live too far away to walk and bike can talk about walking and biking in their neighborhood. That's been a very important thing for Minnesota Safe Routes to School, not just to and from school, but where they live is very important. Champion in the back, champions, oh my gosh. Get the champions on your team and things will be so much easier. If there's somebody who loves walking and biking, knows people at the school, it makes projects so much easier. Working directly with students is the best, enough said. and we are still learning. This is a process that this tool, specifically the scorecard, Minnesota Safe Routes to School, tried for the first time probably 3 years ago, and it's improving and getting better every year. That's all I've got for lessons learned. Any questions before I pass it back to Nora for a couple more resources?
Okay, I'll just use that. I don't know how far that one stretches. Okay, so I'm going to describe a resource that I helped develop for Minnesota Safe Routes to School that hopefully can be an opportunity for you all if you choose to explore this resource further. It can be supportive in helping you deepen into this equity work in a Safe Routes to School context. So this guide, was specifically designed for Minnesota, but really it's a bunch of exercises and activities that can be applied in any Safe Routes to School context across the country. So really like the core values or intentions behind this guide are a balance between action and reflection, guiding the reader towards additional resources, making connections between the personal and the systemic, and moving beyond the what are we doing, but into more of the how and the why, getting beyond just like a checklist of equity steps and getting more into like looking internally, digging a little deeper, and continually bringing these steps back and back again and again throughout a process. Next slide. So the first half of this guide includes some exercises and steps in an equity-centered engagement process. So as we've referenced many times, like none of these steps are like mind-blowing or super new to any of us probably. But the key here is that they are listed in an order to kind of build upon each other, but really they come up again and again. For example, reflecting on your identity isn't something to be done once. It's intended to be integrated into all of the rest of the steps. So the equitable engagement in the planning process part of this guide is some steps, but they're also nonlinear and continually evolving. Go back again. So the second half of the guide includes some scenarios and examples of planning level Safe Routes to School recommendations that center equity. So basically putting the engagement process into action through scenarios and applying the sort of internal work into a more practical context. Next slide. So for each of the equitable engagement steps, there's a section on why it's important, and then an exercise to support reflection around that particular step. Some of the activities can be done alone, some with a team of other practitioners, and some in collaboration with community members. And then for the crafting recommendations section, there are scenarios where you'd have the opportunity to apply some of the learning and the reflection from the engagement process, exercises, and then there's potential actions tied to each scenario that are short, medium, or long-term actions. The longer-term actions really get to like the root of inequity and looking at the systems that perpetuate it, and then the shorter-term actions are a little bit more temporary, and there's some language in here about the interplay between the short, medium, and long-term actions. Next slide. Okay, so that's the equity guide, Minnesota Safe Routes to School equity guide for planners. Another resource to kind of build upon what we started cracking open today. We're gonna do one little closing activity very similar to how we started, but this time the prompts are an aha moment that you had, if any, and a next step that you have to take with you from this session. So we're gonna take 1 or 2 minutes to turn to someone next to you and just yeah, fill in the blanks with these sentences, and same for the people online. Bridget will facilitate your discussion, and I'll call you back after 2 minutes. Okay, wrap up your conversations. And you can bring your energy back over here. If you can hear me, touch your ear. If you can hear me, touch your nose. If you can hear me, touch the top of your head. If you can hear me, put your hand by your side. Okay. So similar to how we started, we can just popcorn out some one-word answers. So the first question, or the first prompt, one aha I had was, if you yell them out, I'll repeat them with the mic. One word. Connecting. Better outreach. Leanne, did you say document? Yeah, documenting. Mm-hmm. Okay, what about, say it again? Creativity. Easy, I think I heard. Make it easy. Okay, what about one next step? What's one word for one next step that you might have? Research. Ask. Share. One more. Encourage. Connect. Okay, well, I think we're at time, and that was all we had planned. So hopefully that gave you some things to reflect on and think about and take with you. We'll be here if you have any further questions, and thanks for participating.